Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's Red Dead Redemption 2 video, we are going to be taking a look at a panel that almost all of the main voice actors and motion capture artists from RDR2 did, where they revealed some never-before-seen details or never-before-heard details on the game, including cut content, love interests, and a whole lot more. So if you're interested in watching the entire panel, I'll actually leave a link to that in the description. There's a couple parts where they talk about, giving tips and advice on acting and stuff like that. And while it's cool, I'm only going to be talking about the moments where they refer to things actually happening in game. So if you are interested in that, it's about 40 minutes long. Like I said, I'll leave a link to it in the description. The first interesting thing that comes from this interview comes from Sadie Adler's voice actor and motion capture artist, Alex McKenna. And she talks about why Sadie is not necessarily a love interest in the game. Take a listen to this.
Well, I was very, very fortunate due to the writing that Sadie, yes, she's a female, but she's just a strong character. And I think Rockstar did something that is rather unusual in the gaming world, where my character has an incredible arc. She starts out, she's basically lost everything. She's vulnerable, she's in a bad way, and becomes this incredible badass. And because Rockstar just let her be a strong character and not just a strong female, she's not a love interest either. There's a really wonderful friendship and mutual admiration and respect that they foster throughout the story. And it was pretty awesome.
So that's really cool. We've talked about this in previous videos, how I think Sadie Adler's love interest with Arthur was cut from the game. But she's right. Sadie, aside from being one of the best female characters in the game, is one of the best characters in the game. And Alex said it best. Her character arc is incredible. She became a badass so quickly. So that's really cool details right there. The next interesting bit of information comes from John Marston's voice actor, Rob Wiedoff, who talks about one thing that John never had to do.
And just along those lines too, were there any particular scenes that you felt were more difficult than others? Is there anything that stands out as a particular challenge, like saying something that we can all remember, like this particular part was a nightmare, or this particular part was so much fun? What stands out for you?
I had a lot of trouble, and I don't know if anybody else experienced this. I don't think that you did as much, but the swimming, never get it.
It's just one hand and then the other hand.
So obviously, if you guys don't get that joke right there, John Marston can't swim. And this goes back to the days of Red Dead Redemption where he couldn't swim. And I don't know if this was just a performance thing that Rockstar couldn't manage back in 2010, but they certainly carried that over into Red Dead Redemption 2. And in this game, John Marston can't swim either. The next hysterical instance comes from Bill Williamson's voice actor, Steve J. Palmer. He talks about a moment in Red Dead Redemption 2 where he was actually having trouble recording something, and what happened was hysterical.
What was interesting for me, and this kind of, you can piggyback on what Ben and Alex were saying, we're working with these headpieces. A lot of the time, we're doing 90+% of our own performance capture. There's some big things where we had doubles or stunt people so we could hurt ourselves. But there was one scene early on in the first year of doing it where I think it was one of the scenes, I believe it was in Valentine, if I'm not mistaken. And we were doing an action scene, and I was working with Noshir Dalal, who plays Charles, and if anyone follows him on social media and watches him work out, the man is a beast. And one thing—
Watch him eat too.
Yes. Oh my God, watching him eat. But one thing in trying to hug a fellow performer in a scene and dealing with that is, if you're doing your own action scene, you need to put an additional like the sponge elastic chin strap on, because if you get hard enough, that could fall off. And there was one scene where I was with Noshir as Bill, and he's in front of me, and we were scattering I went on, and he didn't see me, and he plowed into me. I'm a big guy. I went flying, and this is before I put the chin strap on. After what happened, they said, no, we're doing chin straps for stuff like this. My headgear went flying off, and I laid down. And the crew behind the table's laughing because they're looking at their version of the performance capture, and Bill's head is just floating off the body. And I just remember laying down, and everyone's laughing, and No Shear's looking around, had no idea what happened, and just turned, where's Steve? And looked down, and it was like, "Dah!" And I was laughing too, but yeah, so that's a different element. Also, never mess with No Shear.
So that was really cool to hear because you got to hear Bill sort of explain, they wear helmets and they have these funky cameras set up on their face, and it makes it hard to record, and they've got big chin straps on. So it's a lot different than just talking to someone in like normal street clothes. They've got all these different instruments on, which makes things pretty difficult. Up next, we get some interesting information from voice actors like Rob and Gabrielle Sawyer, who played Javier Escuela, about some cut content that never made its way into the game.
I'm Sam. My question is, I don't know if you guys are allowed to talk about this or not, but were there any parts that got cut from the game that you wish had not got cut?
I fought off wolves when we rescued Rob. I had a whole wolf fighting scene. I would like to see that. Wouldn't you like to see that? Let's write some letters. See if we can get that back. Also, I don't know if this piece of dialogue came in, but I was talking with Dutch. I don't know, maybe you guys would know better than I do, and it was some kind of meta satire on gaming. And I'm like, Dutch, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, you know how you stick with the arts, I have a plan. And I'm like, it just seems like we're running, and then we stop, and then we run again, and then we stop, and sometimes we pick up things, and then we stop. And I had this whole dialogue about just being in a video game. It felt like I keep running, and then I press pause, and then I stop. I don't know if that made it in, but it was really funny.
So I am hoping that Rockstar sometime down the line makes a story mode DLC for Red Dead Redemption 2, because I just feel like there was so much cut content from the game, and it would be amazing to see what never made its way into the final version of the game. Now, throughout this panel, fans from the audience were allowed to ask questions, and one of the questions that this individual asked for Roger Clark and all the others on stage was what they thought about the ending. And their response to this was really cool.
I'm Patrick, and my question is pretty general. What was the general consensus and feeling behind the ending, and how it all culminated in that last mission?
Me and Pete, we worked on that for a while, didn't we? Yeah, we worked in tandem with our two stunt doubles, who were amazing. And the way the animators blended in our performance with the guys, with the work of the stunt guys, was absolutely mind-blowing. But that took a few days, didn't it, man?
It was at least a few days, yeah.
Yeah, and it was quite physical. And
well, for a lot of that choreography, the stunt guys were doing the fight.
Yeah,
but
and the animators would butt in every once in a while, saying, "Oh, it'd be really cool if you did that too." Like elbows to the faces and smashing heads into the cliff face.
And we did we tried to do as much as we could as far as that was concerned. So
we always had the face cam, as we've mentioned earlier, and the stunt guys had the luxury of just having a skull cap with some, and so they had, obviously they were far more athletic, but they also had the luxury of not having the camera pointing at their face too. So they had a lot more mobility, especially as far as the head was concerned. So they could react, because one of the biggest parts about it is trying to get a punch in the face and jerking your head back. It would more often than not it could jolt the camera, Stunt guys didn't have that problem.
So I did not know this, but apparently it took days to do that ending scene where Micah and Arthur are fighting on the cliff, and obviously John and Dutch are involved in that too. That's crazy. I did not know that it took so long. That was probably a really difficult scene to ultimately try to create. Another fan asked a question that was pretty cool. They wanted to know about Arthur or Roger having to do the dances with some of the ladies of the gang, like after certain events where Jack is saved or something like that. And his response is pretty funny.
You guys were talking about the motion capture devices and how difficult they were to work with. At the end of one of the scenes early on in the game, like your character, Arthur, you're walking around after one of the big events, everybody's having a party and there's music and one of the girls asked you to dance. How did you film that, and was it difficult to do that with your motion capture device?
Oh yeah, that was with Sam Strelitz, fantastic actor, who we all love very much. And I think we did another dance with Joe Arminox, who plays Karen. But dancing wasn't so hard as kissing or hugging. It was a little, and after a couple of years, you get very adept at maneuvering it and having spatial awareness of your partner's head cam as well as your own. So that wasn't so bad. But it was a joy to do with Sam. She's awesome.
And the last big thing I got from this interview is someone asked Steve J. Palmer, or I think the entire cast, or the returning ones from the original Red Dead Redemption game, how they portrayed their characters based off of the original. And Steve J. Palmer, who plays Bill Williamson, gave an amazing response to how he portrayed Bill Williamson.
When I found out this was going to be a prequel, the people who play the original game is just like, wow, Bill Williamson is really angry, and he is. And what I wanted to do is bring a more kind of like go in depth on his more human side. And I would recall a mission in the first game where it's the one where John and Abigail go to deliver the corn seed to Bonnie McFarland, and they're coming back and they're talking about everything John went through, and he's talking about just how crazy Bill had gotten in New Austin, and Abigail had mentioned, she's like, Bill? A terror? And she's like, that's not who he was. He's a clumsy dolt idiot. And in going to the second game, I made the decision, is like, I wanted to show Bill how Abigail saw him. Whereas this clumsy guy, but she said it in kind of like, kind of a passive but somewhat warm, like, Bill's harmless. How did he turn into that? So when I approached Bill in Red Dead 2, I took it as someone who really just wanted attention. I took it as Bill as someone who's just completely misunderstood and doesn't know how to express himself properly. That's the impetus into what you guys got in the new game.
So like I mentioned earlier, if this full interview interests you and you'd like to check it out for yourself, I'll leave a link to it in the description. We got a ton of amazing info from the voice actors and the motion capture artists, and it was just really cool to see. So as always, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about this panel, this interview, and more. If you did go on to enjoy this video, though, a like rating would, of course, be awesome. And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new or you like daily Red Dead Redemption 2 videos like this. With all the way, guys, like I said, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.